Good morning, and it's lovely to be back in St. Michael's again, although it's just not the same without you. We've been studying the book of Nehemiah, and this week we're on to Nehemiah chapter 7. We get to this really funny old chapter in the book of Nehemiah. What on earth are we to make of a list of names of people and their jobs? This chapter is kind of the filling in the sandwich between two chunks of chapters. So chapters 1 to 6 are all about the building of the walls around Jerusalem. And that's all we've learned so far. We've journeyed with Nehemiah and the people through the ups and downs of a physical building project that happened in 52 days. Chapters 8 to 13 are all about the restoration of the people of Judah, and we haven't got there yet. That's all to come. But chapter 7, the filling in the sandwich, is the pivot in the book of Nehemiah. It's a bit like halftime, and there is this team talk, halftime team talk. We hear all about the tactics for the next part of the game, or more particularly, how Nehemiah is going to lead these people into a place of national and spiritual health. The people have been living away from home. They've been building these walls. They've got the job done. And now they have to start living a new life. They've got to find a new normal. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? We find ourselves in an unfamiliar place. We've been living in a very different set of circumstances from what we have been used to for a long time. And at some point, we will have to find our new normal. So now what? After lockdown ends, do we just go back to the way it was, smoothly and seamlessly, as if nothing has happened? I don't think so. I think life has changed, and we will be forever marked by this. We will all have different emotions, scars, ups and downs as a result of COVID-19. We will all remember it corporately as a massive event, a once-in-a-lifetime happening that we've experienced as a nation. But we will also remember it individually for the way in which it has challenged and changed us and our lives. We will be reassessing our values and our lifestyle. We'll be looking at our priorities. We will look back at what has been, and then we'll have to look forward to what is to come. As the people did under Nehemiah's leadership and care, Nehemiah leads the people of God beautifully into their new normal. He does a lot of amazing leading. But I want us to focus on two things that we see prioritized by God and then actioned by Nehemiah. There are the external physical things, and there are the internal spiritual things. The walls are the exterior physical thing that have been accomplished, they've been rebuilt. But now Nehemiah looks ahead to what's going to go on inside the walls, how life and worship, the interior things, will be. He starts to action the spiritual rhythm and life of the nation, of God's people. So you see there that there are two things that are really important to God, and therefore to Nehemiah. And those two things are worship and people. So let's explore these two things together. Firstly, worship. Worship was the reason for the city's existence. Jerusalem was all about the temple that Solomon had built so that God could be worshipped. The walls were built to protect the city and to keep the people safe so that they could worship. Worship was at the heart of Nehemiah's desire to rebuild the walls. He loved God and he worshipped him. And his life is a life of worship. Building the walls reveals his passion to see God honored and glorified. He understands what it is to worship. His passion for God drives his worshipful existence. It's what makes him such a prayerful guy. He wants to live out what he believes about God. He embodies the verses from Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. From what we read in the book of Revelation, a good part of heaven will be spent praising God in corporate worship. The saints gather with the angels and the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders, and they sing, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain, and to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever." We'll so be caught up with the beauty of the glory of God that we will be lost in wonder, love, and praise. Nehemiah's priority was to ensure that God was at the heart of their personal, local, and national life. His priority was to put God first and to honor him. Our calling too is to worship God. And it's to worship God with our whole lives. To how we do our relationships, how we spend our money, what we read, what we build, and how we do lockdown. Those are our spiritual acts of worship. So too when we come out of lockdown. Our whole lives are meant to be lives of worship. The verses at the beginning of the chapter show us that these people were people who would lead worship. There were the musicians to lead the music, Levites to provide teaching, leaders of integrity like Hananiah and Hananiah who were appointed to lead, and then there were the gatekeepers. They were there to protect the people, to look out for the vulnerable. Just in church today, we need people who are gatekeepers, to look out for the young, the elderly, the vulnerable, the lost, and the lonely. We need all of these people, the musicians, the leaders, the teachers, and so on. Which brings us onto the second thing, people. People matter to God. You matter to God. The list of names we read in this chapter shows us that every individual matters to God. And it's important to God because each of us, you have a unique calling, and each one of us can be used by God. He wants to use us. The thing is this: a city is more than bricks and mortar. A city is people. That's what one commentator writes. And the same is true of church. This is what I write. A church is so much more than bricks and mortar. A church is people. An empty church like this isn't how it's meant to be. We're meant to be the people of God together. In 1 Peter 2, we read this: "As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ." And later in that same chapter, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. These names in this chapter may mean nothing to us, and we can read them and feel completely bored. But every single person that is on that list is known to God. That just makes my heart leap. That even if no one else knows my name, even if no one else knows your name, God knows you. Listen to these beautiful words from John chapter 10. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Do you know that the Bible tells us that he knows how many hairs are on our head? In Luke chapter 12, verse 7. And let me just say, although I won't expand on it because of time, that families matter to God. Look through this list and notice this. But the crux of the matter is that God loves people. And he has chosen us, his people, to be the church. We are the church. People look at us to see what Jesus is like. We are God's plan A. We get to bring hope and joy and peace and mercy and grace and help and care and generosity to our community, to our parish, to those next door. We get to bring the good news of Jesus Christ to our neighbors, to our communities, and to our families. And so today, as you go about your business, remember those two things: worship and people. And as you do life, do it as if it were worship, and love the people around you. Have a great day.